practicing it. So let's start with the continuation of what we did in the last class. Before we could proceed, Natali, what are the 5 question words that we normally make use in English? Question words. How? Normally we have all these 5 words, isn't it? What are they? What, why, where, when, and how, isn't it? Now, why do you think that the title of the poem that we are doing is having one or the other relation with these question words? How do you connect it to the title of the poem that we are doing?
Because it says when you are in future.
So, future, okay? Then, what do we normally have an answer to the question when you ask WHEN? Time. Does it say something about the time? So when, if I am asking you, like, when did you come? When did the class start? What's your answer? Time. It is always related to time there, isn't it? So why I specifically asked you this question is like you got to know here when you say these 5 question words in English, we normally make use of, isn't it? We definitely make use of these 5 question words, and each word has its own connotation in what kind of an answer can you expect, isn't it? So one of those words is the title of the poem there. What is that? When. So when you say that when you are old, I think in the last class we have discussed about 2 stanzas, isn't it? So when you have read that, or when we have discussed about what exactly is the poet is willing to tell us with these 3 stanzas of the poem which he has, you have very clearly understood that yes, it is something that is referred to the duration, the time. It could be the past, it could be the present, or it could be the future. But the one thing that is very confirmed thing to say here is it's about the time, and hence he has used it, this word in the title, saying when you are old. Clear? Okay, Hussain, tell me what do you find in the very first stanza of the poem, or tell me about the pre-reading activity that we did. What's the name of the poet?
W.B.
Yeats. And what exactly does he talks to us in the pre-reading activity, or those 2 questions?
What is the difference?
What is the difference between love and the infatuation? Okay, don't you think that even time comes here when you say that the difference between love and infatuation? What is that thing that we discussed? Like, what is the difference between love and infatuation?
After some time.
After some time again. So time is there, isn't it? So love is something which could be eternal, or something that could last forever, isn't it? On the other hand, you have another word which is infatuation, temporary, isn't it? Infatuation, just a kind of a feeling that you will get which can be termed as an infatuation. Second question. Do you think that the perception of love changes when you see as one gets older? And that is very clearly, accurately told in the second stanza of the poem there, isn't it? Right? So these are the 2 questions that we discussed on part of, like, what can you find out in this one? So Sandeep, what have you noticed in the first stanza of the poem when the Yeats is telling us about, like, who's the speaker, or who's the speaker in the poem, and what does he say?
In the first stanza, the poet asks the loved ones to take the book when she is old,
Yes.
and to read it down
Yes.
when she is
when she becomes old, he wants her to sit by the fire. Why is that phrase used, or a line is used there? We were talking something about the European Union, isn't it? So we were discussing, like, they have only 2 seasons. One is the winter, the other one is the autumn, isn't it? So these are the only 2 seasons that we can find there. So in the very first stanza, the very opening line itself of the poem is nothing but the title of the poem, isn't it? When you are old, isn't it? So now, the second stanza. You. You were not there in the last class when I discussed that. No. Absent. Easy excuse. You tell me, Father. Second standard. Don't look into it. Whatever that you remember, just tell me. What does it say? What does the poet say in the second stanza of the poem? Forgotten, don't have the time to revise or think or keep it in your mind.
When you are old, when you are young, so many people like you, they were not having true love, but they were liking your body, beauty of your body. But one man loved you for true.
Yeah.
And he also have been with you till your old age.
He will be okay with you. Oh, but here he says that, like, I will be there with you for your sorrows as well as for your pains in your life, isn't it? He especially refers to a phrase called pilgrim's soul, isn't it? So what does that pilgrim's soul refers to here? The true love, or the love, so to say, something which is pure, something that lasts forever, something that is eternal. So the pilgrim's soul in you was something that was liked by me. So look into this, read this first two stanzas, and then we'll come on to the third one and then wind up this poem. So, when you are old and grey and full of sleep. So, there are three words here in this line which refers to the old age. Okay, the old itself is the very first word. Grey color always associated with the person. In a person, when he or she starts growing old, and then full of sleep. Probably these are the three words in which the poet wants to tell us that if a person who becomes old, it may be due to these three words that he has used. And nodding by the fire, take down this book. That is, the poet tells to the lady whom he loves that instead of just killing the time, okay, sitting next to the fireside or something, what I have a suggestion, or what I would like to request, or what I would like to tell you is that take a book. And that book specifically is a work written by the speaker himself, or by W.B. Yeats himself. And what does he say? And slowly read and dream of the soft look, youth, okay, her youth, her earlier days, and your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. So her eyes was very bright when she was young. That is what you got to understand in that stanza, isn't it? So he suggests her to take a book, start reading, and that book is a reference to all the works of the poems that were written by the speaker himself, or by the Yeats, or W.B. Yeats himself. When he comes to the second stanza, he further goes and tells us more about the lady and her look, or her beauty. What is being told? How many love your moments of glad grace? Grace? The appearance. Okay, here it is actually the glad grace. That is the facial. We always talk about the facial expressions these days, isn't it? In a similar way, how many loved your moments? How many loved when those moments were there in front of them when you were very young? Okay, glad grace. And love your beauty with love which could be either false or true. We do not know, but there were men in your life who actually loved the physical appearance or the physical beauty. And then, but one man loved the pilgrim soul, that is the pure soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. That is, my love to you will not be an infatuation. It will be something that was there in the beginning which will last forever. Whether you grow old, whether you are in sad, whether you are in sorrows, or whether you are in happy, there was a man who loved you for any changes that came in your life. Okay, those changes you have to understand in terms of the sorrows, the happiness, or even the act of growing old from youth to the adult, or maybe from adult to becoming a old lady or so, because he was the man who loved this pilgrim's soul. So, who's the pilgrim soul here? Obviously, the lady whom he loved, whom he is addressing this poem. Coming on to the last stanza here, he talks to us more about love, and he winds up in the form saying that, and bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. The very last stanza of the poem is something that talks to us about how their love. Okay, all this while in the first or in the second stanza we were talking about a love from the man towards a woman, and in the last stanza what we notice here is that how the love of theirs, so I'm including both now, the man as well as the woman, and how it got immortalized. What do you mean by immortal? Something that never dies. So here in the last stanza, what we see here is that both the man as well as the woman in the poem are recognizing each other in such a way that both of them are of the fact that their love became pure. Of course it was, and it became immortalized. How? That is the description in those 4 lines. Clear? So read those 4 lines again to yourselves once. Can you find nature in all those 4 lines? Yes. There is mountain, yes. There are stars, isn't it? And then what else? How love fled, isn't it? So there are certain words in the stanza which tells us about, like, how their love is even remembered today. That is what you got to understand there. All this while, what we were discussing is, like, in the first or in the second stanza, we were just discussing about the man, about his love towards the lady whom he loved. But when you come to the last stanza here, you quickly understand, like, what exactly the poet wants, or what exactly their love became at the end, isn't it? So, and bending down beside the glowing bars. Remember in the first stanza, where did this lady was sitting? Where was she sitting? She was sitting next to the firewood, or near the firewood also. In the similar way, here is a reference. And bending down beside the glowing bars. Why do you think that now she is bending? Because she has a book in her hand now. Okay? All this while, before he could, or before the poet could address her, she was just sitting and killing the time, or she was just passing the time. But when he told her to start reading, because it will give her and way to go back to the past days in terms of remembering their youthful days or something by reading the poems or the book that was given or that was asked by him to take off. So, and bending down beside the glowing bars, that is, she starts bending and starts reading those poems or the works by the poet and murmur a little sadly. Murmur, you all know. Murmuring, but she is very sad now. Why? She is old now, isn't it? She comes back to her present picture where she has become very old, isn't it? So murmur a little sadly, how love fled. Fled, past tense form of fly, isn't it? Fled. Again, time is referred here, isn't it? So what she is murmuring with a little sad in her voice is that how time went on. Isn't it? So doesn't it happen to you also, like when you think of your childhood days? How time fled. You are in 12th now, isn't it? So when we talk here about passing of the time, a time is something which can be or which is eternal. Isn't it? Can you go back and buy the time back? Ever? Not possible. Once is gone, is always gone, isn't it? You cannot get it back, you cannot bring it back. That is why the speaker in the poem says that she starts reading those poems, but this way she just remembers her youthful days, what she was doing and all those stuff, and when she comes back to her present, she has grown old now, and she is murmuring for the fact that the time has fled very fast. Clear with these two lines there. That's what he says. And bending down beside the glowing bars. Glowing bars is a reference to the fire there. Okay, the glowing bars and murmurs. That is, she is just murmuring something very sadly on the fact that the time has passed very fast. It has fled like anything. The time has fled like anything and paced upon the mountains overhead. Where did this time go? Pace. What do you mean by pace? Speed. Again, speed here, isn't it? P-A-C-E. Look at the spelling there, okay? So the pace, that is, and paced upon the mountains overhead. That is, the time has fled away. The time has flown away to the mountains that are there overhead. That is, the time has gone back to the nature, or their love has gone amidst the mountains that are surrounded. Okay, and he also says that, and hid his face. That is the love's face. That is the love between you and me. That is the man and the woman, which has hid his face amid a crowd of stars. That is a reference that is being made to the nature. One on the mountains, the other one on the stars, the galaxy of the stars, the crowd of the stars. Their love has vanished, because at this point of time, what we notice here is that both the speaker or the poet and the lady whom he loved have grown old, and now they are realizing that how did they spend their youth, or how did they spend when they were youth or when they were adults or whatsoever. But the time has fled so very fast that they now can remember what has happened and where has it gone. So it has gone to the mountains, or it has hidden his face amidst the crowd of the stars, or of the galaxies of the stars. And he concludes the poem saying that when you are old. In the initial part of the poem, we see a suggestion coming on from the poet in order to do the things in her when she was old. Later on, it was also remembered within the second stanza about how many men came in her life and what was the one man different from others. That is in the second. And when you come to the third stanza, there is a kind of a realization by both the man as well as the woman in terms of how time has passed. Clear? All of you? So this is the conclusion of this poem, when you are old. So go through the poem once. Well, if you have any phrases or the words or any lines that is not understood, you can ask me. or else we will come on to the comprehension part of the word. Okay, anything to be readdressed? Anything to be clarified? No? Okay, Anirudh, read the glossary.
Questioning.
What?
Questioning.
What do you mean by quest? Questing. Anyone? Quest. Heard of this word? What is questing? I quest. Search. Quest is for longing, isn't it? Something that you want to find. Questing soul. Now, which is the questing soul here? The old lady, isn't it? Now she was questing her, she was looking for her, she was searching for her soul when she was young.
The glowing bars.
The glowing bars.
Parts of the fire place to the glowing coal.
Okay, now coal is something that you make use in order to burn. Okay, so that's why the reference is made for the glowing bars. Then, nodding, you all know, familiar with that word that you have there. Then, murmur. That's again a soft spoken voice that she's trying to remember. So now, clear all of you? Okay, take down or mark the comprehension one part of the questions that are being given here. The speaker is addressing an old woman that he has met now, the woman that he had admired in his life, or a young woman he has loved. Which one? Option A. That is a young woman he has loved. Why? He still remembers that his love is eternal. That is why present tense is used there. Okay? Have this thing clear in your mind. Then, in line 2, the word book refers to memories to some extent, yes, but more precise one is the book of poems or the work by the poet. The book of poems. The phrase glad grace suggests her physical beauty. Her physical beauty, glad grace. Nothing but the glow that she had on her face when she was young. Pilgrim soul means the soul which is in the quest of true love. Option C, question number 4. Alright, and then 5. What does the phrase your changing face suggest? The age, the growth. Okay, it also suggests the love and also the sorrows of one's life. Love fled connotates the death of the man who loved her, or the fleeing of her lover to the mountains, or the toss endured by her. I need an accurate one, the precise one. The death. The death of the man who loved her, we cannot exactly say that since option B. The fleeing of her lover to mountains. Come on to comprehension 2 and look for those 2 questions that have been asked under comprehension 2. Okay, the very first question, how is the one man which is given in quotes different from many others who loved the lady? So, stanza number 2 in your poem holds answer to this question. Okay, so you can read that stanza again and again, and then probably you can think of your own way of writing the answer to this question. The very difference between the man who loved and the many other men who came in her life is just the difference between love and infatuation. Okay, take the word love and infatuation and term it under the man who really loved her and the other men who actually got attracted to her because of her physical beauty. Clear? All of you. So refer to the second stanza of the poem and then you can just have your own phrases or the sentences to answer this question. Then, does the poem bring out the transient nature of beauty as against the permanence of love? Transient. Transformation. Okay? Transient is something that is change. Okay? So transient. Does this poem bring out the transient nature of beauty as against the permanence of love? So you can talk about the love in one part of your answer and about how whether it exactly changes the transient on that to the part of the permanence of the love. So whose love is permanent here? The poet, that is the speaker and the lady whom he loved, isn't it? So that particular thing you can make a contrast. Now, this is a very important question on comprehension 3 that you have, that is comment on the usage of time frame by the poets. Time frame. What is there in the first stanza? What is the time frame? When you are old, isn't it? That is the first this thing. Listen up. What is there in the second stanza, the time frame? It is about their past. Isn't it? Whose past? The man as well as the lady, isn't it? And when you talk about the third stanza, time has fled. It can be the present there, isn't it? Now it has gone onto the mountains, overhead of the mountains or something, or it has become eternal by somewhere hiding his face in the armor of or in the stars. That is what you exactly need to understand. So the poet has very categorically used the time frame in the 3 different stanzas where you will have to give importance to how the time has been used as a frame in order to understand the poem there. Okay, so it's one of the very important questions. So I would request you to just mark it or do whatever, but it has been asked many a times about how W.B. Yeats has used the time frame in the poem when you are old. So just highlight it or do whatsoever you want to do. Then the next question is, when you are old is a poem of contrasts. What is contrast? Contrasting. Opposite, difference, isn't it? You can just change it in that way. Poem of contrast, what purpose do they serve? Why do you think that he is making difference, or why do you think that he is talking something about opposites here? Is a change of contrast. Why does he make these changes, or why does he make contrast in the poem? Because it's a love poem, number one. At the same time, it is a poem that has been written with respect to time. Isn't it? You can see your present, they are present there, you can see their past, and you can also see that, how people would remember their love. All 3 tenses are used there in the 3 different stanzas. So that's why you can say that it's a poem of contrast, because time is something which has been very much used by the poet in reference to what you need to tell. Okay? Then, for the suggested reading, when you just look into certain titles that have been given in order to understand the poem better, Sonnet 116 by Shakespeare. Okay? Then you have My Love is Like a Red Rose by Robert Burns. This is also a poem. And then How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways by Elizabeth B. Browning. Again, she is also poetess, so to say, who wrote many poems on love. And then you have certain other things in your language. And the more happiest way for you people is that read the Kannada translation of the poem that is being given and see if you can find any difference there. I asked you to read, not to discuss and laugh because of the title or maybe because of the explanation. Maybe something that is read once quickly. No one read Okay, enough. So before I could wind up, very quick look at the sonnet that have been given there. So let me just tell you something more about the sonnet there. Though this poem is not a sonnet, as I'm giving you a brief note on the types of the sonnet here, that doesn't mean that you have a sonnet here to study. First of all, it is very clear that when your old is not a clear. Okay, it should be very clear in your mind. But in the suggested reading, the textbook asks you to refer to one of the poems that has been written by William Shakespeare, and it is termed as the sonnet number 116. When you want to know more about the Shakespearean sonnets, which are also called as the English sonnet, okay, there are two types of the sonnets in English. Okay, the first one is the English sonnet, which is also called as the Shakespearean sonnet. One example is suggested in your reading. Okay, on the other hand, you have one more type of a sonnet which is called as Italian, or it is also called as Petrarchal sonnet. Okay, this is just only for your understanding I'm saying. Okay, If you are not interested to listen, I will stop. You can categorize any sonnets into two different types. The one is the Shakespearean sonnet, which is already given here, or it is also called as the English sonnet. Hence, we are doing it in English, the language that we are supposed to do so. So, we got to be very careful here in identifying what kind of a sonnet does it come in order to. Okay. Now, the first fact should be in your mind is that there are two types of the sonnet that you can find: Italian sonnet and the English sonnet. English is also called as a Shakespearean sonnet, whereas the Italian sonnet is also called as the Petrarchan sonnet or so. Now, why it is divided into two different types? The first thing is that it, first of all, understand that a sonnet is a poem that contains 14 lines. That should be first of all clear in your mind. Okay, then it has been divided as Shakespearean or English sonnet and the Italian or the Petrarchan because they differ in the form. Now, what is the form here? These lines. Okay, these lines. So, what you need to understand here is that any English sonnet or a Shakespearean sonnet will always have 3 stanzas of 4 lines, and it is always followed by a couplet. What is couplet? 2. Couple means 2. You all know that. Now, when we say couplet, it is about the lines in a poem. Clear? Now, what is the form of an English sonnet? It will have 3 stanzas of 4 lines each. That is 3 to 4, 12 lines, and then it is always followed by a couplet that talks about the whole poem. What type of a sonnet is this? English sonnet. Okay. On the other hand, when you come to the other form of the sonnet, what is it? Italian. So to say, an Italian sonnet or a Petrarchan sonnet, the form is entirely different than what is an English sonnet here. So you just have an octave and a sestet. Now what is octave? 8. Octave, you all know that, right? So an octave is 8 lines of a poem, and then sestet is the 6 lines of a poem. So stanzas are divided in this way here. That is why these poems are divided in 2 different forms, because of the way that they come in their form. Okay, so you are mainly reading, or you will be reading more of the English or the Shakespearean sonnets. Okay, but let this thing be there in your mind that there is another part or there is another type of a sonnet which is Italian or Petrarchan. First of all, understand how they have been divided into. Why they have divided? Because of the form here. So the octave in an Italian sonnet is something about the description of a theme of a poem. Okay, and the sestet, that is the last 6 lines, will act as the something that they speak more about those octave lines that you have done also. Okay, now this is the way, or this is the initial difference between the 2 types of the sonnets that we have here. Okay, and one more thing I would like to tell you here is that Shakespeare, you all know that he was also a dramatist, also a playwright. In the similar way, W.B. Yeats, the poem that we have just concluded discussing, that is, When You Are Old, the poet W.B. Yeats is also a poet as well as a playwright. We have discussed when we discussed more about the poet then. Okay, now the sonnets that were written by Shakespeare are about 120 so far. I'm just telling you some glimpses of the English literature here. That is, Shakespeare has written all those comedies and tragedies for which he is even famous even today. We all know that. One such example is that we have already done your first unit, Romeo and Juliet, which was. And in your earlier classes, you might have studied his plays like The Merchant of Venice, or you might have done Othello, or you might have done Hamlet, something like, all this, like the plays that he has written, which are classified as comedies, tragedies. Tragedies are something that are very vague. Tragedies are the plays that are still enacted, played, produced, performed on stage, which you all know. At the same time, Shakespeare has also written the poems. There are around 120 sonnets that have been written by Shakespeare, in which, from sonnet number 1 to 80, he addresses all these poems to one of his friends. We do not know who it is. Even today, it's a kind of a myth. But from the sonnet number 81 to sonnet number 120, he actually has written these poems for the lady whom he loved, unlike this When You Are Old. So why I specifically wanted to bring this idea here is that you have been asked to read the poem 116, isn't it? Or suggested reading. I know you will not do that. Yeah, but still, sonnet number 116 is something that falls under the love poem that is written by Shakespeare. Now, why do you think that he has actually asked you to, suggested you to refer to this poem? The theme is love here. At the same time, you can almost find the similar way of what we did in When You Are Old and the sonnet number 116 also. Am I clear with this? So two types, they differ because of their form, and suggested reading 116, why it is being told. This is what I just wanted to tell. So I just wind up this class here, and from tomorrow onwards, I want everyone to get your streams text. That is workbook. If you are not having workbook, you are not going to sit in the class. So from tomorrow onwards, we will start discussing the grammar things that are going to come for your board exams. Okay, we have done much of literature text. From tomorrow, we will move on to the workbook. All of you have the workbook?
Yes, sir.
So we will be discussing the grammar things that come in the text. So stop here and continue in the next.